My dad called my sister his greatest gift, and thanked her for giving him 2 perfect grandchildren. My son, the one I raised alone after my husband died, looked straight at me and whispered, "But what about me?" I didn't leave. I clinked my glass and said this. My dad almost choked on his champagne. My name is Linda. I'm from Portland, Oregon, and I ruined my parents' 40th wedding anniversary, depending on who you ask. But to me, I didn't ruin anything. I just said what no one else had the nerve to say. The whole thing took place at some overpriced country club outside the city. White tablecloths. String quartet. Enough crystal and silverware to make your eyes twitch. It was all my mother's taste, meaning expensive and cold. My dad just went along with it like he always does. Danielle, my sister, flew in from San Diego with her husband and their 2 kids. They got the red carpet. My mom met them at the door like a celebrity welcome committee. There were tears, hugs, someone handed them drinks before they even sat down. I came in with my son Brian, 15, quiet, sharp as hell. No greeting, no fanfare. My dad barely looked up from the shrimp platter. I hadn't expected anything different. It's always been that way. Danielle could do no wrong since we were kids. Straight A's, prom queen, married young, 2 kids in private school. I wasn't a screw-up, but after I lost my husband in a car accident 8 years ago, I was the one they looked at like a problem they didn't know how to solve. So I came. For some reason I still haven't figured out. Dinner was fine. A little tense, but manageable. Brian was doing his best to blend in with Danielle's kids and I kept my head down. But then after the cake, my dad stood up with a glass of champagne and cleared his throat. That sound. That stupid throat clear that always meant a speech was coming. He started slow, talking about love, commitment, the passage of time. It was standard fare until he turned to Danielle. He said, "Danielle has been our greatest blessing." He said, "Watching her grow into the woman she is today has been the joy of our lives." Then he looked at her kids and said they were perfect. That they were the legacy he and mom had always dreamed of. And then my mom, sitting beside him, raised her glass and added, "To Danielle and her beautiful family, the best part of our lives." Brian didn't look at them. He looked at me. Then he leaned in and whispered, "But what about me?" I didn't even feel angry. It was something colder than that. Like when you finally understand something that's been bothering you for years. I stood up, clinked my glass. Everyone looked over. My mom gave me this forced little smile like she was expecting me to say something sweet. I said, "I just want to raise a glass to the worst parents in the room." "You did it," you finally said out loud what we all knew. "Danielle's your favorite and the rest of us are just scenery." A few people laughed nervously, thinking I was joking. I wasn't. I said, "While you were sending Danielle checks and watching her kids on weekends, I was raising my son alone. After my husband died, you didn't even ask how we were surviving. But at least now I know it wasn't an accident. It was a choice." The silence was unreal. Dad froze, champagne still in his hand. Mom looked like someone had slapped her. Relatives were staring at me like I'd just thrown the cake on the floor. Then the comments started. "That's not something you say to your parents. They did their best. You should be grateful, they've always loved you in their own way." It was like a wall closing in. Everyone stood up for them. Except Danielle. She didn't defend them. Didn't jump in. Just sat there staring at me like she'd seen a ghost. Then Mom told me to leave. So I did. I told Brian to grab his coat. We walked out without a word. On the way home he didn't ask questions. He didn't need to. He knew the answer already. The next morning I found myself staring at the kitchen window, holding a mug I hadn't taken a sip from in over an hour. Brian was still asleep, curled up under the throw blanket on the couch. Neither of us had made it to our beds last night. We just stopped moving. I didn't expect anyone to call. And no one did. Not even to check if we made it home. Not even out of basic decency. Around 10 there was a knock at the door. I opened it and there she was. Danielle. Still wearing the same coat from last night, hair pulled back like she'd gotten no sleep. She didn't wait to be invited in, just stepped inside and looked around like she expected the place to be worse than it was. She didn't say anything at first. Just sat down at the table and put both hands on it like she was bracing herself. Finally she said, "They were awful last night. I'm not even going to try to defend them. I don't know what's wrong with them. But I saw Brian's face, Linda. And I saw yours. It was..." She didn't finish. He didn't have to. Then she told me she hadn't slept either. That when they got back to the hotel, our parents acted like nothing happened. Like I was the one who had a breakdown in public, like I embarrassed them for no reason. They even laughed about how dramatic I was. She said she'd snapped at them. Told them they were delusional if they thought they were good parents. That she was sick of being the golden child if it meant they could treat me and Brian like we were less than real people. I didn't cry, but I felt something tighten in my chest. I'd never expected her to take my side. Not in a million years. Danielle looked around again and asked if we were okay. "Really?" I told her we always manage. She nodded slowly, then asked if she could talk to Brian later. Alone. Just to say something, anything to make sure he didn't carry this like a weight for the rest of his life. After she left, I sat there for a long time. I wanted to feel better, but all I could think about was how easy it was for our parents to pretend they hadn't done anything wrong. Like this had been some outburst, not the result of years of silence, dismissal, and carefully ignoring anything that didn't fit their perfect family narrative. Later that night they called. I didn't pick up the first time. Or the second. On the third try I let it ring once and answered. It was my mother. She didn't apologize. She didn't even say hello. She just asked how I could say those things about them in front of everyone. How dare I humiliate them after everything they've done for me? I didn't even argue. I just asked her what she thought they'd actually done for me. She said without hesitation, we let you live in the basement after Greg died. For almost 3 months. Rent-free. Like that was some kind of lifelong debt I still hadn't repaid. She ignored the fact that they refused to co-sign a loan when I had nothing. That they told me I was too emotional when I cried over my husband's death. That they only saw Brian on birthdays, and even then, it was usually just a gift card slipped into a reused envelope. 3 months in their basement. That's what they hung their whole legacy on. She hung up before I could say anything else. And that's when I knew. This wasn't going to be fixed with one apology. Maybe not at all. I think everyone has a breaking point, but most people never recognize theirs until it's already behind them. For me, it came somewhere between that voicemail from my father and the second email from my mother. By then, the damage had already been done. I wasn't sitting around hoping they'd change anymore. I was just deciding what to do with what was left. After the anniversary fallout, I expected some kind of silence. The kind of pause people take before pretending nothing happened. Instead, I got a flood of messages. Missed calls. 2 long emails. A third from my aunt, who clearly got a version of the story where I lashed out unexpectedly and embarrassed the family. I didn't even reply. I just deleted it. Dad left a voicemail that still plays in my head sometimes. He said I'd made a scene, caused unnecessary pain, and worst of all, dragged Brian into adult problems. He told me I was punishing my sister for having a better life. And then, in the same breath, he said Danielle had always had to carry more because I couldn't handle my own life. That was it. That was the exact moment the door in my head slammed shut. The funny part is he said it like it was a well-known fact. Like something obvious that everyone understood but me. The kind of thing that explained everything. Why they never offered to babysit after Greg died. Why they never once asked if I needed help when Brian got sick and I couldn't afford the medication. Why they didn't come to Brian's 8th birthday party because Danielle's youngest had a school play. I called Danielle that night. Told her I was done. Done hoping. Done reaching out. Done pretending we were one of those families that simply needed to talk it out over coffee. I said I wasn't angry anymore. I was just finished. She asked what I meant. I told her I wasn't going to be part of their lives if I was only ever going to be the background. The support character in a story where they only celebrated one lead. And I told her something else. Something I had been quietly carrying for years. Over the past decade, I'd helped them more than I ever admitted. I paid for Dad's new glasses when their insurance changed and the cost nearly knocked him over. I sent anonymous payments to clear their overdue utility bills, twice. I bought their groceries one winter when they were tight after the holidays. They never asked, not directly. They just hinted. Let things slip. Waited for me to offer. And I always did. Like some messed up instinct. I never told Brian. I didn't want him to grow up thinking you should give to people who make you feel invisible. So I told Danielle that it was over. I wasn't helping them anymore. Not financially, not emotionally, not as the family scapegoat. I wasn't going to be the responsible one cleaning up behind the golden child's shadow. Danielle didn't fight me. She just said maybe it's time they see what it feels like to be on their own. The next morning the emails started. The first one was from Mom. Long, rambling. Defensive in that self-pitying tone she always uses when she knows she went too far but doesn't want to admit it. She said she was devastated by how I spoke to them. That I was cruel. That I had twisted the truth and shamed them in front of everyone they knew. She went on about all the things they supposedly did for me. How they gave me a roof. A decent upbringing. How they let me move into their basement after Greg died, rent-free for 3 months. She wrote that line like she expected it to be underlined and highlighted. Like those 90 days were supposed to cancel out the years of silence that followed. I sat there staring at the screen. Then I scrolled up and reread that line again. They always acted like those 3 months were some enormous gift. What they never mentioned was that after those 3 months they gave me 30 days to get out. Said I needed to find my own feet. Brian was 6. I was in grief counseling. I had 2 part-time jobs and no child care. That part never made it into their version of the story. And at the bottom of the email she wrote, "You're our daughter whether you like it or not. That doesn't change just because you're angry." I didn't reply. I wasn't angry. I was clear. For the first time in my life I saw it all for what it really was. And I wasn't going back. I hadn't spoken to my parents in over a week. Danielle and I exchanged a few texts, mostly short check-ins. Brian had gone quiet too, but in a different way. He wasn't withdrawn, just observant. Watching me. Watching how I handled it all. I think he was waiting to see if I'd backtrack, if I'd forgive them again like I always used to. Then midweek Danielle showed up at my door again. She didn't knock like she had before, she just walked in and called my name. When I came into the kitchen she was sitting at the table, no coat, just a thick folder in front of her and a strange look on her face. She slid the folder toward me. Inside was a printed copy of our parents' will. I stared at it for a second, wondering why she had it, why she was showing it to me. She told me she'd asked to see it. Said something about having a gut feeling after everything went down at the anniversary. She never thought they'd actually put the favoritism in writing, but they had. I flipped through it slowly. The house, the savings, the car, the life insurance policy. Everything went to Danielle. Not just a majority. Everything. I was mentioned once. A small financial gift. No amount listed. No mention of Brian. No family heirlooms. Not even a line about splitting sentimental items. Nothing. Danielle said she confronted them about it. She didn't sugarcoat it. She told Mom she was shocked and disgusted, asked why I was left out so blatantly. Mom didn't hesitate. She said Linda's not stable. She wouldn't know what to do with it. She's always needed help. Danielle's always been the one we could trust with real responsibility. That's the word that stuck. Stable. Not hurting. Not grieving. Not trying to survive as a widowed single mother. Unstable. Like I was a broken dish they didn't know where to store. Danielle told me she lost it. That she packed her things and left their hotel that night. Moved into a short-term rental across town just to get away from them. She said it was the first time she realized how deep it really went. How I wasn't just being dramatic or sensitive. I'd been erased. Then she pulled something else from her bag. From them. Handwritten. Folded twice. She said they gave it to her to bring to me. Told her it was a peace offering, and that if I accepted it maybe things could go back to normal. Maybe the family could move forward. I didn't even open it. I tore it in half and dropped it in the trash. Danielle didn't stop me. He just said quietly, "Good." We sat in silence for a while after that. I could tell she wanted to say more but wasn't sure how. Then she told me one more thing I hadn't expected. She said she was revising the will. With a lawyer. Without them. I looked at her confused. She said, "I'm making sure it's split equally no matter what they want. And if they change it again behind my back I'll waive my share. I'm not letting them use me to punish you anymore." I didn't know what to say. I'd always assumed she benefited from the favoritism, but it turned out she hated it just as much. She just didn't know how much damage it had caused until she saw it spelled out in black and white. Later that night my father called. From a number I didn't recognize. I answered without thinking, then immediately regretted it. He didn't yell this time. He sounded cautious. Careful. Like someone who knew they were walking on unstable ground. He said he heard Danielle had visited. That she was very upset and saying things that didn't sound like her. I didn't say anything. He kept going. Said they never meant to hurt me. That they just assumed I was busy, independent, off doing your own thing. That Danielle always seemed more plugged in, more available, more predictable. Then he said, "We didn't know how to help you after Greg died. You changed. You pulled away. It felt like maybe you didn't want us involved anymore." I waited a second before responding. I told him that grief doesn't come with an instruction manual, and even if it did, it wouldn't have said ignore your daughter and her 6-year-old grandson for a decade. Then I said something that came out before I could decide whether I really meant it. I told him I didn't want a relationship with them anymore. Not the version we had. Not the one where I was tolerated, not loved. Not the one where every gesture came with conditions. Not the one where I had to bleed to be seen. He didn't fight it. He just said we thought we were doing the best we could. And I said that's the problem. You really believe that? The next morning I checked my bank account. Out of instinct, not expectation. There was a pending deposit. Thousands. From them. I declined it without blinking. That was the first morning I didn't feel guilty about saying no. After I declined the bank transfer I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd finally take the silence for what it was. A boundary. Not a threat, not a tantrum, but the final quiet closing of a door. But they didn't. If anything, the silence made them panic more. The messages came in waves. First from Mom. Long, circular emails full of poetic language about family, tradition, forgiveness. She kept calling it a misunderstanding, as if she'd tripped over her words in public instead of erasing me and my son from her life for years. She wrote, "Families fall apart when people hold on to pain and you're better than this." That line hit me like a slap. Not because it hurt, but because it was such a perfect summary of how she's always seen me. Not as someone hurting, but as someone overreacting. The voicemails were worse. My dad sounded tired. He asked me to talk things through, but it was clear he still didn't get it. He said they might have made mistakes, but their intentions were never bad. Then he dropped the part they had been holding back until now. They needed help. Apparently they were behind on the mortgage. They had refinanced the house twice. Credit cards were maxed out. Their savings were smaller than they let on. Retirement hadn't panned out the way they'd planned. Mom's medical bills had started piling up. And for the first time they couldn't just pretend things were fine. Danielle had never known. Neither had I until now. And suddenly all the times they let things slip about needing help made sense. They had been relying on me quietly in small ways. The grocery runs. The gas money I slipped into Dad's coat pocket that winter without telling him. The bill I paid directly to their electric company so their heat wouldn't get shut off. They never thanked me. But they remembered. And now they were asking again. Only this time I didn't answer. And then something happened that flipped the whole thing on its head. They called Brian. I was in the kitchen halfway through making dinner when he walked in holding his phone like it was a spider. He said Grandpa called me. Left a voicemail. I stopped what I was doing. I asked him if he listened. He shook his head. Then he looked at me hesitant and said, "Are we gonna have to take care of them one day?" That hit me in a way nothing else had. Not because I didn't have an answer, but because I did. I sat him down and told him the truth. That just because someone is family doesn't mean they get to treat you however they want and still expect loyalty. That love is a gift, not a wage. And if people spend years refusing to show up for you, you don't owe them anything when the roles reverse. I told him he never had to feel guilty for protecting himself. He nodded, didn't say much. But I saw something change in his face. Not relief exactly. Just a quiet kind of understanding. Like I'd confirmed something he was afraid to believe. That same evening Danielle called. He sounded different. Not angry, not upset, focused. She'd gone to see them. She said the house looked like a shell. Quiet. Dark. Like something had shifted there too. My mom barely spoke. My dad seemed like he hadn't slept. She told them bluntly that I wasn't coming back. That they'd finally crossed a line they couldn't talk their way around. He said my name. My real name. Not your sister. Not the emotional one. Not the complicated one. He told them I was done. And she made it clear that she was starting to understand why. Then, and this I didn't expect, she told them she wasn't going to keep helping them either. Not unless something changed. Not unless they actually took responsibility, not with money, not with gifts, not with half-hearted apologies, with honesty. Danielle told them, "You made Linda feel like she wasn't part of this family. You made her raise a child alone while pretending you were involved. If you want either of us in your life, you don't get to skip the truth." Apparently Mom cried. Danielle said it wasn't loud or dramatic. Just quiet tears and a strange kind of expression she'd never seen before. Dad didn't say much at all. No defense. No speech. Just stared at the table like he'd finally realized how deep the cut went. Then Danielle told me something else. When she left, my mom followed her to the door and asked one question. "Do you think she'll forgive us?" Danielle told her, "I don't know. And you don't get to ask me that." That night, I lay in bed for hours staring at the ceiling. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad. I was still. The kind of still you feel after a storm you didn't think would ever end. For the first time in my life, they were sitting in the loneliness they'd always reserved for me. And I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. Almost a month passed before anything changed. No calls. No emails. No last-ditch attempts to guilt me back into the fold. For once, the silence felt intentional, like they'd finally stopped trying to force a shortcut through something that couldn't be rushed. And then out of nowhere a letter arrived. Not typed. Not copied and pasted from some emotional manipulation guidebook. Handwritten. From my dad. I stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. The handwriting was messier than I remembered, slanted in places like his hand had trembled. Inside were just a few paragraphs. No dramatics. No excuses. He wrote that they had been wrong. Not just about the night of the anniversary but about years of things they had chosen not to see. He said, "We mistook your silence for strength. We thought if you weren't asking for help you didn't need it. That was a failure on our part. You were grieving, raising a child, holding your life together with nothing. And we saw it as distance, not survival." He said they hadn't truly looked at me in years. Hadn't asked what I needed. Hadn't asked who I was becoming. They just assumed. And the worst part? They didn't even realize they were doing it. Then at the bottom in smaller writing he said they were hosting a dinner. A real one this time. Just family. No big show, no speeches, no champagne. He said if you come we won't ask for anything. We'll just listen. If you don't come we'll understand. Either way we're sorry. I didn't respond right away. I reread it. Left it on the counter. Picked it up again the next day. Something in it felt different. There was no pressure. Just space. A rare kind of honesty I wasn't used to from them. That night I showed it to Brian. He read it silently, then asked, "Do you think they mean it this time?" I said, "I don't know. But I think they're trying to." Then he said, "So if we go, it's for us, right? Not for them." That was when I made the decision. Danielle hosted. Neutral territory. I think she knew if it happened at my parents' house, everything would fall right back into the old rhythm. The one where they were in charge and I was tolerated. Her place felt different. Warmer. She met us at the door like we were the ones being honored this time. Hugged Brian first, then me, and said nothing about how long it had been. Inside, the table was already set. Simple food. No decorations. My parents were there, already seated, looking 10 years older than I remembered. Not in some dramatic, pitiful way, just worn down. Like the roles they'd clung to had been peeled away, and all that was left were two people who didn't know what to say anymore. Dinner was quiet. No big topics. No sudden confrontations. We talked about Brian's classes. Danielle's youngest getting into theater. The new dog she adopted last month that had already chewed 3 remote controls. And then, without warning, my dad looked up from his plate and said, "Linda, we should have said this years ago." Everyone stopped. He looked at me, really looked, and said, "We weren't good parents to you. We didn't show up when it mattered. We didn't see what you carried alone. And we didn't try to understand you. We just expected you to be okay so we wouldn't have to feel uncomfortable." Then he turned to Brian and added, "That wasn't your fault either. You deserved grandparents. Not strangers." My mom spoke after. Her voice was quiet. She didn't defend herself. She didn't list what they'd done right. He just said, "I thought I was showing love. But if it didn't feel like love to you, then I wasn't." It wasn't a perfect apology. But it was real. And I didn't say I forgave them. I just nodded. I let it land. Let it exist in the space between us. After dessert, Danielle and I stayed behind in the kitchen while the others went into the living room. She handed me a cup of tea and asked, "Do you think this is the start of something real?" I said, "I think it's the first time they've ever listened." "That's something." Then she looked at me for a long second and said, "You're the strongest person I know. I hate that you had to be." We didn't cry. We didn't hug. We just sat there, 2 sisters who had grown up in the same house but lived in 2 different worlds. Now finally sitting at the same table. Not because things were fixed, but because they were finally honest.